I overheard my husband tell his friends I married by mistake. Hi, everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I still remember the exact moment I met him. It was one of those perfectly ordinary days that somehow become extraordinary. I was at a coffee shop, balancing my laptop, phone, and an overpriced latte, when I collided with someone. Coffee spilled everywhere. My papers scattered across the floor like autumn leaves. And there he was, Daniel, kneeling down to help me, his dark eyes filled with genuine concern and a hint of amusement. "I'm so sorry," he said, gathering my soggy notes. "Let me buy you another coffee, and maybe a towel." I laughed despite my frustration. There was something about him, something warm and magnetic that made the disaster feel less catastrophic. We talked for 3 hours that day. He told me about his work as an architect, his dreams of designing buildings that would stand for generations. I told him about my teaching job, my love for literature, my secret ambition to write a novel someday. He listened like every word mattered. Like I mattered. Our courtship was the kind you read about in novels. Daniel was attentive, thoughtful, romantic in ways that made my heart skip. He brought me flowers for no reason. He remembered small details I mentioned in passing. When I told him once that I loved stargazing but never had the chance, he drove me 2 hours outside the city to a hilltop where the sky exploded with stars. We lay on a blanket, his arm around me, and he whispered, "This is what I want. You and me, looking at beautiful things together for the rest of our lives." I believed him. God, I believed every word. He proposed after 18 months. It wasn't elaborate or showy. We were at my apartment cooking dinner together. Pasta carbonara, if I remember correctly. He was chopping garlic, and I was stirring the sauce when he suddenly put down his knife, wiped his hands on a towel, and pulled out a small velvet box. "Marry me," he said simply. "I don't want to spend another day without knowing you'll be mine forever." I said yes before he even opened the box. The ring was beautiful. A simple sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds, but I would have said yes to a twist tie. I loved him that completely. That, absolutely. Our wedding was small and perfect. My parents cried. His mother embraced me and called me daughter. We wrote our own vows. I promised to support his dreams, to stand by him through every challenge, to love him in sickness and in health, in success and in failure. He promised the same. His voice cracked when he said, "You are my home, Sarah. You are everything I never knew I needed." I wore a simple white dress. He wore a gray suit that made his eyes look even darker. We danced to a jazz song his grandfather used to play. Everyone said we looked perfect together. I felt perfect. I felt chosen. I felt loved. The first years of marriage were good, better than good. We bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood. Daniel's career was taking off. He was getting bigger projects, more recognition. I was proud of him. So proud. When he worked late nights, I brought him dinner at the office. When he lost a major contract to a competitor, I held him while he processed the disappointment. I told him he was talented, that his time would come, that I believed in him unconditionally. And I did. I believed in us. We had our routines. Saturday morning farmers markets, Sunday evening movie nights, annual trips to the coast where we'd walk along the beach and plan our future. We talked about children, about the house we'd build someday, about growing old together. He'd pull me close and say things like, "I can't imagine my life without you," or, "You're the best thing that ever happened to me." I held those words like treasures, but somewhere around our 3rd anniversary, something shifted. It was subtle at first. A coolness in his touch. conversations that felt more obligatory than genuine. He started working later, coming home exhausted and distant. When I asked if something was wrong, he'd say he was just stressed about work. Deadlines, difficult clients, the usual pressures. I understood. Or I tried to. I gave him space. I continued to be supportive, to make his favorite meals, to ask about his day even when his answers grew shorter and less detailed. I told myself this was normal. Marriage isn't always fireworks and romance. Sometimes it's quiet partnership. Sometimes love looks like patience. But there were moments that unsettled me. The way he'd look at me sometimes, like he was seeing a stranger. The way he'd pull away when I tried to hold his hand. The way he stopped saying, "I love you," unless I said it first. And even then, it sounded automatic, mechanical. Once we were at his colleague's birthday party. Everyone was drinking, laughing, sharing stories. I was talking with some of the wives when I glanced across the room and saw Daniel watching me. Not with warmth or affection, with something else. Something that looked almost like regret. When our eyes met, he quickly looked away and rejoined his conversation. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid or insecure, that every marriage goes through phases. We were fine. We had to be fine. My friends noticed too, though they were careful about how they brought it up. My best friend Maria asked me once if everything was okay at home. I smiled and said yes, of course. Why wouldn't it be? She looked at me for a long moment like she wanted to say more, then just squeezed my hand and said, "You know I'm here if you ever need to talk." I didn't need to talk. There was nothing to talk about. Daniel was just busy, stressed. We all go through rough patches. This was temporary. It had to be. But the distance grew. Conversations became transactional. "Did you pay the electric bill? What time will you be home? We need milk." The intimacy evaporated. We still shared a bed, but we might as well have been continents apart. I'd lie awake at night, listening to him breathe, wondering when we'd lost each other and how I could find the way back. I tried. God knows I tried. I suggested date nights. He was too tired. I planned weekend getaways. He had work commitments. I asked if we should see a counselor. He said we didn't need one, that I was overreacting, that every couple goes through this. So I swallowed my concerns and kept trying to be the perfect wife. Supportive, understanding, patient, waiting for the man I married to come back to me. Then came the night that shattered everything. Daniel was hosting some friends at our house. A guy's night, he called it. His college buddies were in town and they wanted to catch up. I didn't mind. I liked his friends well enough, and I thought it might be good for him to relax and have fun. I planned to stay upstairs, give them their space, maybe read or catch up on work. I made appetizers, set out drinks, then excused myself around 9. "You guys have fun," I said, kissing Daniel's cheek. He barely acknowledged me, already deep in conversation with his friend Marcus about some football game. I went upstairs to our bedroom, changed into comfortable clothes, and settled in with a book. Their laughter drifted up through the floorboards. It was nice hearing Daniel laugh. He hadn't laughed like that in months, at least not around me. Around 11, I realized I was thirsty. I'd left my water bottle in the kitchen. I didn't think twice about going downstairs. It was my house after all. I'd just slip down quietly, grab my bottle, and head back up without disturbing them. I was halfway down the stairs when I heard Marcus's voice, slightly slurred from whiskey. "But seriously, man, you've got it made. Beautiful wife, nice house, successful career. You're living the dream." I paused, smiling slightly. It was nice to hear someone else validate our life together. Maybe I had been worrying over nothing. Then I heard Daniel laugh. But it wasn't a happy laugh. It was bitter. Hollow. The kind of laugh that makes your stomach drop. "Dream?" he said, more like a comfortable trap. I froze on the stairs, my hand gripping the banister. Another friend, Jason, chimed in. "Come on, Sarah's great. What are you complaining about?" There was a long pause. I held my breath. Maybe he'd agree. Maybe he'd say he was just joking, that he'd had too much to drink. Maybe he'd remember the vows we made, the life we built, the love we promised. Instead, he said, "I married by mistake." 4 words, 4 simple words that detonated like a bomb in my chest. "What?" Marcus sounded shocked. "I married by mistake," Daniel repeated, and his voice was completely sober now, deadly serious. I was young, caught up in the romance of it all. She was sweet and supportive, and everything seemed right at the time. But I never really thought about whether she was the one. I just thought marriage was the next step, you know? We'd been together long enough. Everyone expected it. So I proposed. My legs felt weak. I sank down onto the stair, my hand pressed against my mouth to keep from making a sound. Jason said something I couldn't quite hear, and Daniel continued, "Don't get me wrong, she's a good person. She's been a good wife. But there's no spark. There never really was, if I'm being honest. I convinced myself what we had was enough. But now? I see my old classmates posting on social media with their wives, and you can see the passion, the connection. I don't have that. I don't know if I ever did." "So why stay?" Marcus asked. "If you're that unhappy?" "Because what's the alternative?" Daniel's voice carried a resignation that made my heart ache even more. Divorce? Admitting I made a mistake? Hurting her and dealing with all that drama? It's easier to just go through the motions. She doesn't seem to notice anyway. She's so busy being the supportive wife that she doesn't see I checked out a long time ago. I bit my knuckle hard enough to taste blood. Tears streamed down my face, hot and unstoppable. Every happy memory, every tender moment, every promise suddenly felt like a lie. Had any of it been real? Had he ever loved me at all? The conversation moved on to other topics, but I couldn't hear it anymore. There was a roaring in my ears, a pressure in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I somehow made it back upstairs on shaking legs, closed the bedroom door, and collapsed on the floor. I married by mistake. Those words looped in my mind like a cruel mantra. Everything I'd believed about my life, about us, about my worth as a partner and a woman crumbled. I thought about all the times I'd supported him, championed him, sacrificed for him. I thought about the nights I'd lain awake worrying if I was enough, if I was doing enough, if I could somehow fix whatever was broken between us. And all along, he'd considered me a mistake, a comfortable trap, someone he settled for because divorce was too much trouble. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor. At some point, I heard his friends leave. Heard Daniel moving around downstairs, locking doors, turning off lights. Heard his footsteps on the stairs. I quickly climbed into bed, facing the wall, and pretended to be asleep. He came into the room quietly, got ready for bed with efficient movements. The mattress dipped as he lay down behind me. For a moment, I thought he might reach out, might touch my shoulder or say something. But he didn't. He just rolled onto his side, facing away from me, and within minutes, his breathing deepened into sleep. I lay there in the dark, tears soaking the pillow, and wondered how I would survive this. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a pounding headache. Daniel was already up, getting ready for work. I watched him from the bed, this man I'd loved so completely, and tried to reconcile him with the person who'd casually destroyed me the night before. "Morning," he said, not looking at me as he knotted his tie. "You were asleep when the guys left. We tried to keep it down. I should have pretended everything was fine. I should have played along like I always did. But I couldn't. Not anymore." "I heard you," I said, my voice hoarse. He glanced at me in the mirror. "Heard what?" "Last night. I came downstairs to get water. I heard everything you said to Marcus and Jason." His hands stilled on his tie. His face paled. For a long moment, neither of us moved. "Sarah, You married me by mistake." My voice broke on the last word. "I was a comfortable trap. You checked out a long time ago. You weren't supposed to hear that." It was the worst possible response, and the look on his face told me he knew it. But I did. I sat up, pulling the blanket around me like armor. Is it true? Any of it? All of it? He turned to face me fully, and I saw a flash of guilt, annoyance, resignation. It's complicated. No, it's really not. I was surprised by how steady my voice was. Either you love me or you don't. Either you want to be married to me or you don't. Either I matter to you or I'm just a mistake you're too lazy to correct. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, a harsh sound that didn't feel like it came from me. You stood in front of everyone we love and promised forever. You called me your home. You said I was everything you needed. Was any of that true, Daniel? He looked away. I thought it was, at the time. Those words landed like physical blows. I thought it was. At the time, past tense, a temporary delusion, a youthful error. When did you stop? I asked. When did you stop loving me? Or did you ever love me at all? Of course I loved you, he said, but it sounded defensive. I did, but over time I realized maybe it wasn't the right kind of love. Maybe it wasn't enough. And you just decided to stay anyway? To let me keep loving you, keep trying, keep thinking we had a future? You let me make a fool of myself. You're not a fool, he said quietly. You're a good person, Sarah. You deserve someone who... Don't. I held up my hand. Don't you dare tell me what I deserve. You don't get to play the martyr here. If you were so miserable, you should have said something. We could have gone to counseling. We could have tried to fix it. Instead, you just checked out and let me wonder what I was doing wrong. I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want the inconvenience, I corrected. You didn't want the mess of divorce, the questions from family and friends, the admission that you made a mistake. So you just let me exist in this marriage alone while you mentally exited years ago. He didn't deny it. He just stood there, and his silence was more damning than any confession. I need you to leave, I said. What? Leave. Get out. I can't look at you right now. Sarah, we should talk about this. Talk? I laughed again, bitter and broken. You had years to talk. You chose silence and contempt instead. So no, we're not talking. Not now. Get out. He looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my face must have convinced him. He grabbed his jacket and briefcase. At the bedroom door, he paused. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I said. You destroyed me, and the worst part is, I think some part of you doesn't even care. He left without another word. I heard the front door close, his car start, the sound of him driving away. Then I curled up on the bed and let myself fall apart. The days that followed were a blur of pain and revelation. I called in sick to work. I ignored messages from friends and family. I moved through the house like a ghost, seeing reminders of our life together everywhere. The photos on the wall, smiling and happy, suddenly looked like evidence of a crime. The furniture we'd picked out together felt like set pieces in a play I hadn't known I was performing. I replayed our entire relationship in my mind, looking for signs I'd missed. They were everywhere, once I knew to look. The times he'd seemed distant or distracted, the way he'd stopped including me in his future plans, the slow erosion of affection and intimacy. I'd explained it all away as stress or fatigue or normal marital evolution. But it was apathy. It was him slowly detaching while I clung tighter. Daniel came home that first night cautiously, like he was entering a cage with an unpredictable animal. I was in the kitchen, not because I was hungry, but because I needed something to do with my hands. Can we talk? He asked. I don't know what there is to say. He sat at the kitchen table. I'm sorry, I am. I know I handled this badly. Handled what badly? Being honest about how you feel or letting me find out like this? Both, I guess. He rubbed his face. I was a coward. I should have told you when I first started feeling this way. When was that? I needed to know. When did I stop being your wife and start being your mistake? He thought about it. Maybe 2 years ago? Things just felt different. We felt different. 2 years. We'd celebrated our anniversary 2 months ago. He'd given me flowers and taken me to dinner and told me he was lucky to have me. All while secretly considering me a mistake. Did you ever actually love me? I had to ask, even though I was terrified of the answer. I did, he said, and he sounded sincere. I really did. But I think I loved the idea of you more than I loved you. Does that make sense? It didn't. But also it did. I was the supportive wife, the understanding partner, the woman who made his life easier. I fit a role. I served a purpose. But me, the actual person I was beneath all that, he'd never really seen. Or maybe he'd seen and just hadn't cared enough. What do you want? I asked. Do you want a divorce? He hesitated. Do you? I asked first. He sighed. I don't know. Part of me thinks maybe we could try to work on this. Go to counseling, see if we can find our way back. Find our way back to what? A marriage that was apparently never what I thought it was? I shook my head. I can't do this, Daniel. I can't be with someone who sees me as a mistake, as a comfortable trap. I deserve more than that. You do, he agreed quietly. You deserve someone who loves you completely. I thought I had that. I thought you were that person. Tears blurred my vision. How could you let me believe something that wasn't true? I wanted it to be true, he said. I kept thinking the feelings would come back, that I'd remember why I fell for you in the first place. But they didn't, and I was too much of a coward to admit it. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I said, I want you to move out. Stay with your parents or get an apartment or whatever, but I need space to figure out what I'm going to do. He nodded. Okay, I can do that. And Daniel? I looked at him directly. I need you to understand something. You didn't just break my heart. You made me question everything. Every moment we had, every promise you made, every time you said you loved me, I now have to wonder if it was real. You stole my past along with my future. That's what you did to me. He looked stricken. Good. He should feel some measure of the devastation he'd caused. He packed a bag that night and left. The house felt enormous and empty without him. I thought I'd feel relieved, but instead I just felt hollow. I told my family and close friends what happened. Their reactions ranged from shocked to outraged to devastated on my behalf. My mother wanted to call Daniel and give him a piece of her mind. My father just hugged me and said, "His loss, sweetheart." Maria came over with wine and ice cream and let me cry on her shoulder for hours. I wasted 5 years, I said through tears. 5 years of my life with someone who didn't even want me. You didn't waste anything, Maria said fiercely. You loved honestly and completely. That's never a waste. He's the one who failed. He's the one who gave up something precious because he was too immature to appreciate it. But it didn't feel that way. It felt like I'd been the fool, the woman too naive or desperate to see the truth right in front of her. The next few weeks were a special kind of hell. Daniel and I communicated mostly through text about logistics. Who would pay what bills? When he could come by to get more of his things. Whether we were actually getting divorced or just separated. Neither of us seemed to have clear answers to that last question. I threw myself into work, but it was hard to focus. I'd be in the middle of teaching a class and suddenly remember something he'd said, something that now felt like a lie, and I'd have to pause and collect myself. My students noticed. A few asked if I was okay. I smiled and said I was fine, just tired. I wasn't fine. I was the opposite of fine. I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Chen was a patient woman in her 50s who specialized in relationship trauma. I told her everything. The overhead conversation, the years of disconnect, the feeling that my entire marriage had been a fiction. You're grieving, she said. Not just the loss of your marriage, but the loss of what you thought your marriage was. That's a profound kind of grief. I feel stupid, I admitted. Like I should have seen this coming. Hindsight is deceptive, she said. We see patterns in the past that weren't obvious when we were living through them. You trusted your partner. That's not stupidity. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage. But he didn't trust me enough to be honest. No, he didn't. And that's his failure, not yours. Her words helped a little, but they couldn't erase the fundamental truth. The man I loved had never loved me the same way, and I'd been too blind or too hopeful to see it. About a month after Daniel moved out, his mother called me. We'd always had a good relationship, and I'd been dreading this conversation. "Sarah?" she said, and she sounded tired. "I heard what happened. I'm so sorry." "It's not your fault," I said automatically. "I raised him to be better than this," she said. "I don't know where we went wrong, but the way he treated you is unacceptable. You were always nothing but kind to him, and he threw that away." Hearing her validate my pain helped more than I'd expected. "Thank you for saying that." "For what it's worth," she continued, "I think he's making the biggest mistake of his life. But that's something he'll have to live with. I just wanted you to know that we still consider you family. And if you need anything, you call us." I cried after we hung up. Good tears this time. Grateful tears. The news spread as it always does. People in Daniel's life started finding out about our separation. Some reached out to me with sympathy. Others, I'm sure, heard his side of the story, whatever version he was telling. Then something unexpected happened. Marcus, one of the friends who'd been there that night, called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Sarah," he said awkwardly, "I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I got your number from Daniel's phone a while back." "What do you want, Marcus?" "I want to apologize. I was there that night when Daniel said those things. I should have shut him down. I should have defended you. Instead, I just sat there like an idiot. I didn't know what to say. And I want you to know," he continued, "that a bunch of us called him out on it later. Jason and I and a couple other guys. We told him he was being a complete ass, that he'd had something good and he destroyed it because he couldn't get his head out of his own ego." "What did he say?" "He tried to justify it at first. Said the marriage wasn't working, that you'd both been unhappy. But we didn't buy it. We've seen how you looked at him, how you supported him. The problem wasn't you. It was him being too stupid to appreciate what he had." Marcus's words shouldn't have mattered, but they did. Knowing that even Daniel's friends saw the truth helped chip away at the self-doubt that had been consuming me. "Thank you," I said, "for telling me that." "You deserved better than him," Marcus said. "I hope you know that." After that call, I started to feel a shift. The grief was still there. The betrayal still stung. But underneath it, something else was growing. Anger. Not the destructive kind, but the clarifying kind. The kind that says, I will not let this break me. I decided to file for divorce. There was no saving this marriage. How could there be? You can't rebuild on a foundation that was never solid in the first place. Daniel didn't fight it. If anything, he seemed relieved that I'd made the decision. The legal process was tedious and depressing, as divorces always are. Dividing assets, determining who gets what. We'd bought the house together, but I bought out his half. I wanted to keep it. Not because of the memories, but because it was mine. I'd made it a home. His presence had just been temporary, it turned out. Through all of this, I kept working, kept functioning, kept putting one foot in front of the other. Some days were harder than others. Some days I'd find something of his he'd left behind, some small item, and I'd have to sit down and breathe through the wave of loss. But I was surviving. That was something. About 4 months after our separation, I ran into Daniel at a coffee shop. The same coffee shop where we'd first met, ironically. He was with someone, a woman I didn't recognize, younger, laughing at something he'd said. They weren't overtly affectionate, but the chemistry was obvious. He saw me. Our eyes met. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. I could have made a scene, could have confronted him, demanded to know if this woman was why he'd checked out of our marriage, could have let him see how much he'd hurt me. Instead, I walked up to the counter, ordered my coffee, and walked out without acknowledging him beyond that initial eye contact. I didn't owe him my pain anymore. I didn't owe him anything. My hands shook as I got to my car, but I felt proud. I'd seen him and I hadn't crumbled. That was progress. The divorce was finalized 6 months after he moved out. I signed the papers in a lawyer's office, and just like that, our marriage was legally over. I was single again, unmarried, alone, but I wasn't destroyed. That was the surprising part. I'd survived something I didn't think I could survive. I'd walked through fire and come out on the other side, scarred but still standing. I started reclaiming my life. I redecorated the house, getting rid of anything that reminded me too much of him. I started spending more time with friends I'd neglected during my marriage. I took a painting class, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I traveled, taking weekend trips to places Daniel had never wanted to go. I started to remember who I was before him, before I became the supportive wife, the understanding partner, the woman who made herself smaller to fit into someone else's life. I'd lost myself in that marriage, trying so hard to be what he needed that I forgot to be what I needed. I also started dating again, though that was terrifying. The first few dates were disasters. I was too guarded, too quick to see signs of disinterest or deception. My therapist said that was normal, that I was protecting myself, but that eventually I'd need to take the risk of trusting again. I wasn't sure I was ready for that. Maybe I never would be. But then I met Alex at a friend's dinner party. He was a journalist, quick-witted and kind, with laugh lines around his eyes that suggested a life well lived. We talked for hours that night about books and travel and the beautiful absurdity of life. He asked for my number. I hesitated, then gave it to him. We went on a date. Then another. Then another. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to reveal that he was secretly disappointed in me or considering me a mistake. But he didn't. He was present, attentive, genuine in ways Daniel never had been. "You're guarded," Alex said one night over dinner. "I can tell you've been hurt, but I want you to know I'm not going anywhere. I'm here because I want to be." I cried then, right there in the restaurant. Happy tears this time. Healing tears. I'm not going to say Alex fixed me. That would be giving him too much credit and taking away my own power. I fixed me. I did the hard work of therapy, of self-reflection, of learning to trust myself again. Alex just showed me that not everyone operates the way Daniel did, that there are people who mean what they say, who show up consistently, who see you as a gift rather than a mistake. As for Daniel, I heard through mutual friends that his relationship with that woman from the coffee shop didn't last, that he'd moved on to someone else, then someone else after that. I heard he told people our divorce was mutual, that we'd grown apart, that it was nobody's fault. I let him have that narrative. I didn't need to correct the record or make him the villain in everyone else's eyes. I knew the truth. That was enough. But there was a moment of poetic justice I'd be lying if I said didn't satisfy me. A year after our divorce, I heard from Maria that Daniel had shown up to a mutual friend's wedding alone. He'd apparently tried to bring a date, but she'd broken up with him a week before. At the reception, he'd had too much to drink and gotten melancholy. He told a few people he'd made a mistake letting me go, that I'd been the best thing in his life and he'd been too stupid to see it. When Maria told me this, she watched my face carefully. "How does that make you feel?" I thought about it. "Nothing," I said finally. "It makes me feel nothing. He doesn't get to have regrets now. He made his choice." And that was true. His regret, if it was even real and not just drunken nostalgia, meant nothing. It didn't undo the damage. It didn't erase the words I'd overheard that night. The casual cruelty of being called a mistake, a comfortable trap. He'd had me. He'd had my love, my loyalty, my complete devotion. And he'd treated it like it was worthless. That was his loss to live with, not mine. I'm writing this now. 2 years after that terrible night when my world fell apart. 2 years of healing and growing and learning who I am without him. 2 years of reclaiming my life and my sense of self-worth. Some days are still hard. I still have moments where I question if I was ever really loved, if anyone will ever see me as more than temporary, if I'll ever fully trust again. But those moments are fewer now. The wounds have scarred over. They're still there, still tender if I press too hard. But they don't bleed anymore. I'm dating Alex seriously now. We've talked about moving in together, about building a future. I'm terrified and hopeful in equal measure. But I'm trying. I'm choosing to believe in possibility again. And I'm writing. That novel I always talked about writing, I'm finally doing it. It's a story about a woman who loses everything and finds herself. It's messy and raw and probably not very good, but it's mine. Just like my life is mine now. I think about that version of me who stood on the stairs 2 years ago, hearing her husband call her a mistake. I wish I could go back and tell her she's going to be okay. Better than okay. That she's going to take all that pain and turn it into strength. That she's going to learn to love herself the way she loved him. Unconditionally and completely. I wish I could tell her that being called a mistake by someone else doesn't make you one. That your worth isn't determined by how much someone else values you. That you are enough, exactly as you are. And anyone who can't see that is the one making the mistake. But I couldn't tell her those things then. So I'm telling her now. I'm telling anyone who reads this and sees themselves in my story. You are not a mistake. You are not a comfortable trap. You are not too much or too little or wrong in some fundamental way. You are a person worthy of real love. Honest love. The kind of love that shows up and stays and chooses you every single day. And if someone makes you feel like less than that, like a mistake they're too lazy to correct, then the mistake is theirs. Let them live with it. You move on. You heal. You reclaim your life. You survive. And then, eventually, you thrive. That's what I'm doing now. Thriving. Building a life that's authentic and full and mine. Daniel will always be a part of my history, but he's not my future. I am. The woman I'm becoming, the strength I've found, the wisdom I've earned through this painful experience. He married me by mistake, but leaving him was the best decision I ever made. Not a mistake, a choice. My choice. And that makes all the difference.